Good evening, everyone. My name is Rajiv Chopra, and this is the Dusty Mike podcast. I'm going to start with the recollection of a story, a true story actually. About many years ago, 20 years ago maybe, my family and I, when we were living in Shanghai, we went to stay with my classmate who was living in Osaka, near Osaka actually, a place called Rokwa Island. About 25 or 26 of us arrived at his house and we had a glorious week together. On one day, he took us to a place called Shigaraki, where he introduced us to a potter and he arranged a pottery demonstration, or actually what he did was to ask us to make some pottery after the demonstration. Now, I have absolutely no skills in this direction. So with my son on my back, I pottered around the potter's workshop, brandishing my little dinky camera at that time, while my wife and my daughter struggled to make a vase. And what they produced was something absolutely horrendous. I would have thrown it into the dustbin, but my friend asked us not to do that. So we left and we thought that was the end of it. A few months later, my classmate arrived at our home in Shanghai, and this time it was our chance to play the host. One of the first things that he did was to open a box which had the vase, or the misshapen vase that my daughter and my wife had produced. And what we saw was a fantastic, unusual piece of art. Now, I don't know if the potter sat in his workshop one night, desperately looking at the work that my wife and my daughter had created, searching for inspiration. Maybe he had a bottle of sake or 2 or 3 bottles of sake, and then inspiration struck. So he had glazed the clay, painted it, or he painted it, then he glazed it. I don't know the exact steps, but what he produced was something absolutely unusual. He didn't attempt to smoothen out the rough bumps and the curves in what was the original creation. Instead, he gave it his own interpretation. And what he produced was something absolutely marvelous from a piece of horrendous imperfection. At this point, I want you to pause and just read the quote that I have included in this podcast episode, where Jean Renoir, and I hope I have pronounced the name well, said that perfection bores him. And in these days, we live in a world of digital perfection, or whatever perfection we live in, where everything looks the same. Women, men want to look young. They want to preserve their beauty at any cost. So rather than going through the torturous process of eating healthy, exercising healthy, which many of them do, but they want to augment it with all sorts of supplements and surgical implants and surgical interventions so that they look perfect. And sometimes these go wrong. In the world of digital photography, which we live now, it becomes difficult to distinguish the work of one photographer from another. Everything looks so perfect, so pristine. Everything looks the same. There are 2 photographers I follow, and these are fine art architecture or fine art architectural photographers, one from Greece and one from the Netherlands. Their work is breathtaking. They produce absolutely beautiful black and white architectural photographs, technically perfect. And the first time I saw their images, I was blown away. But then, when you see 20 images or 30 images or 40 images which seem to just be technically perfect, it gets boring. And after a while, you ask yourself, is there no soul? Is there nothing more that I can do? Perfection actually is a desired end result. Now, those who believe in God believe that God is perfect, which means it's the end. That is it. Nothing more can be done. Nothing more will be done. It's over. It's the end. Finished. Perfection is an end. There is nothing more that you can do about it. And that's why Jean Renoir, I'm struggling to pronounce his name, says that he prefers the work of people who interpret reality and not just copy paste what's out there onto their screens or onto their words, whatever, but it's just out there. And it's worth thinking about this because there's a lot that you can do when you live in the world of gray. The Japanese have an absolutely marvelous concept called Wabi-Sabi. And when you talk about Wabi-Sabi, or when you explore Wabi-Sabi, or when you study Wabi-Sabi, you realize that the Japanese seek beauty in imperfection, in impermanence, and in decay. Today we live in a world of artificial intelligence. We live in a world of superficial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is sneaking its way into our lives the way the East India Company sneaked its way into India and other countries. But we are so used to artificial intelligence telling us what to do that we stop using our brains and we stop thinking. If you use grammar checkers like I do, they tell you not to use certain words because it is politically incorrect. I'm not, for instance, I'm not encouraged to use words or expressions like that old man. The older person is what they ask me to say, which is absolute bullshit. If the person is old, that person is old. That's the end. Why do I have to say older person? Why do I need to be politically correct so that everybody feels happy? It's impossible. If you're going to go out and create work, or if you're in the world of business, if you're going to create some sort of product, you will please certain people and you will make some people very angry. That's just the way that life goes. The danger and the beauty of interpretation lies in that you provoke a response from your audience, and you provoke a response that you may like or you may dislike. But once you produce in their own way, and you have to let them interpret it in their own way. It's when the audience actually responds to your work that you know that you have created something marvelous. Imperfection does not by any chance mean that anything goes. It does not include or does not allow for lazy thinking. So it doesn't mean that you can suddenly say, it does not mean that you can wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to use the principle of Wabi-Sabi and I'm going to be lazy and I'm going to produce some absolute rubbish. No, it's just that tiny bit of imperfection, that tiny little bit of impermanence, that tiny little bit of decay that prompts a question, that prompts a response. And it's in that little space of gray that you can create great art. Don't strive to be perfect. You will never be perfect. Strive to be fantastic. Strive to interpret and strive to create a response, an emotional response, an intellectual response, a response. Don't create work that lacks soul, but is technically absolutely perfect. Think about this and let me know what you think. Join the conversation, leave a comment, follow the podcast, follow the blog, and if you like it, recommend it to others and definitely subscribe. See you next time. Happy photographing, happy writing, happy doing whatever it is that you want to do. See you all.